Welcome back to the King's Law Podcast. Thank you for joining me. The topic of this episode is God versus religion. What is God and what is religion? Where they intersect, and what people use them for. All right, so let's start off by saying, I don't on this podcast, I don't want to interject any of my opinions. Right, everything I want to say and everything I intend to say should be rooted in fact, and if it's not, I would like to be called out on it. Right, so I don't intend to say anything that's my opinion. I only intend to speak about what I've read or seen with my own eyes, right? So with that, I'm going to talk about what God is, and what God is perceived to be in this day and age, right? So if you read the Bible and you start from, chapter 1, verse 1 of Genesis, right? It talks about, the creation of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, and it talks about the presence of God there and how he, gave them some instructions, right? And the presence of God was felt in the wind, right? So from that and many other occurrences in the Bible where there are earthquakes and things like that, God is the force of nature, right? It's all around, all encompassing, takes care of you. It's the breath in your, right? Even when we talk about the definition of life in the Bible, right? Adam wasn't alive until God breathed air into his lungs and he took his first breath. That's God in you, right? That's your soul. The air in you, that air that's coming in and out of your lungs is keeping you alive, right? Because you can't see it. You've never seen it. I don't care how, even if you live out in, the Midwest somewhere, you're facing 40 mile an hour winds of gusts of wind. You've never seen the wind before, right? But it is all powerful. It does move the trees. It does bring new seasons. It does bring rain, right? It does move rain out and causes a drought, right? It causes waves, right? You depend on the wind if you're sailing to take you from point A to point B, but you've never seen it in your entire life. Can't say you've ever seen it. And that force, that all-encompassing force, right? That is God moving things about the earth, right? Growing trees, bringing water, making human beings, making different animals and things like that, at a capacity that you can't possibly understand, right? Because we're so small on this planet and in this universe, right? The energy that moves all of that is something we can't understand, but God does, right? And God always was. So if we move on to religion is a set of rules based on some faith that man made, gave a name, and decided to, bring people under that banner as a group, right? Whether that be Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Mormonism, whatever it may be, right? Those are man-made things. And I don't think anyone here or anyone listening could respond and tell me a religion that God made, right? Even if we talk about the Mosaic laws, right? Those were just rules that God felt necessary to go and give Moses, just to be fair. So, you have black and white, what is good and what is bad, and you know what's expected of you because you're my people, right? And that is not a religion. If you believe in God, that just is, right? Because that is a force of nature. You being judged against the law has nothing to do with God thinking you're bad or good, right? The law, the forces of nature that go against you or help you become, prosperous, right? It just is like gravity. If you step off a ledge, you're going to fall. And that is the law, right? The law was before he ever spoke it to Moses. But he gave it to Moses so he can put it down in black and white for his people, because those were his people that he was going to make a nation and make his home with, right? But it was before, right? Because God is all encompassing. He is, always was. He is the force that moves all things and brings all life. And for you to retain your life, right, you have to adhere to the laws of nature. The law, if you believe in God and you know God was and always is, or always was, right? God is and always was, then you know the law always was and always will be. It's never going to change. Nothing changed after it was given to Moses. It just was given to Moses at that time, right? And then if you look at Christianity, which is a religion, if you look at Jesus was a Jew, right? And he was a son of Jacob. He was an actual Israelite. And it's something we'll talk about later, is like what a Jew is, right? A Jew is somebody who I think it's in the book of Esther, right? I think that was the first time I ever seen the word Jew in the Bible, is when they reference people who followed the same laws as the Israelites. Not that they were Israelites, because I think it was I don't know if it was the Persian kingdom. I think it was the Persian kingdom in that book. I have to go look. They had control over a lot of different groups of people, spread throughout many different countries and lands and things like that. But people saw that the Israelites were a blessed people. And so there were a lot of people who decided to follow that lifestyle, right? And the name for those people were Jews, which we still have today, right? If you decide to follow Mosaic law, you are Jewish, because that's what the word means. The word is to describe somebody who follows those laws, the Mosaic laws. And me personally, right? It's not an opinion. If you look at the facts, God is and always was, and so was the law, right? Before you saw it in black and white and decided to follow it or not follow it, right? You were being judged against it, right? There's nobody out there, whether you're an atheist or whatever religion you subscribe to, right, that will condone murder. Because inherently, human beings know that's bad. They know that something bad is going to come back to them if they decided to murder someone. And that's because it's part of the laws of nature. God is nature. God is in control of everything, right? Without you writing it down, your life is at risk if you commit a murder. And all the other rules that come along with that are the same. But some people choose to subscribe to some laws and then, disregard others. Right? But that does not fly with God, right? You're going to turn God against you. And God is everything, right? God is the force that is making your chest move in and out so you can breathe and stay alive, right? So you're going against your own life at that point in time. And that's where you say you're judging yourself, right? Because God is not looking at you and saying he's a bad person because this, that, and the third, right? It's just the laws of nature. So if you read it and you decide to go against it, you're just taking your own life. It's the same thing as committing suicide. And the point of me saying this is you going against nature or deciding to read up on how to survive and thrive in nature. And when I say nature, I'm talking about this world that if you believe in God, right, and you believe in the God that gave Moses the law, right, you believe that it was created. This world was created by God. So when I say the word nature, I'm talking about this world that was created by God, right? And is in full control of. It is controlled by God, right? And so I wouldn't call that a religion. If you are a God-fearing person, you wouldn't call the Mosaic laws a religion. That's just nature. That's what controls. Those are the rules of the universe, right? When we get into religion, we're talking about man-made congregations. And when you look at those man-made congregations, they all have their own sets of traditions, celebrations, and then rules. Now, one of the laws in one of the Mosaic laws is, to follow the law, all of the law, and to not add to it or take from it. Right? Because it is and always was, and you don't need to consider anything else. So when you look at religion, and you look at these man-made institutions, whether you have priests, pastors, rabbis, or, imams, whatever it may be, right? There are different laws and traditions that you're not going to find in the Mosaic law. Right? So you are adding a burden onto your life that you don't need to. Is man-made. And in not my opinion, when you look at the facts, and if you look at the world as a God-fearing person, right? The God-fearing, talking about the God that gave the laws to Moses, if that's what you believe, right? The laws of nature say you only have to follow the laws of nature. Don't let anybody oppress you with anything else. Then all of these institutions are not of God. Right, because they all have their own traditions, and don't get me wrong. I'll break this down in future episodes. But when I talk about Jesus and things like that, I've read the New Testament. Right, I told you I read the Bible before about 3 times, every word from front to back. So we're talking about the New Testament too, and I've read what Jesus said, and there is nothing that Jesus said that was out of law. Most people don't know that because they don't know the law. Right, and even one of the warnings that Jesus gave, and I don't want to make this like a Bible study. You got to go read it for yourself. Right, but one of the warnings that Jesus gave in the New Testament was you shouldn't even be listening to what I'm saying unless you know my Father and his law. You can't possibly know my Father unless you know his law. You're not a son. And everything I say, talking about Jesus, everything Jesus said, everything that he said, would be a stumbling block unto you if that's not what you have already done, right? So all the folks who call themselves Christians, who have not studied the law and don't know the law or respect the law, right? You're not adhering to what Jesus said, because Jesus was preaching the law. Jesus was an orator. He was not the creator of a religion. Jesus did not create Christianity. Jesus was preaching the law, telling people to follow the law. And when people came to him and were healed, he said, I did not heal you. Your faith has made you whole, because he was the living embodiment of the law. And coming to him was having faith in the law that God provided, right? So he said, your faith has made you whole. Go forth and sin no more. But that's another conversation. So Jesus, and I'm not even going to say in my opinion, right? I want to say in my opinion, but like I told you in the beginning of this conversation, nothing I say is my opinion. This is just from what I read after close study, very, very close study, right? Nothing that Jesus said was outside of law. He was preaching the law and did not intend to make a religion, and he didn't make a religion, right? Because Christianity didn't exist during the lifetime of Jesus. I would say there were people who might have been confused about what Jesus was saying, because as we know, right, as adults, maybe not kids, people tend to, lie a lot, right? And one lie that people like to tell that I've noticed is they read the Bible. And I mean, if that's a lie today that people tell, ain't nothing changed but the day of the week. I can assure you back then people were lying, saying that they know the law or read the ancient scrolls or whatever, right? And I'm sure they didn't. So Jesus had followers, disciples, and people following him, and he rebuked them many times. When I don't want to use Bible term because I'm not a pastor, right? He checked them many a times, telling them, get behind me, Satan, to Peter, telling them they wasn't with him, telling them they didn't know who he was because they don't know his father, right? But he was telling them that because they did not know what he was talking about. And he knew, based on their responses to what he was saying, they did not know the law and they did not know the prophecies that he came to fulfill. So you don't believe in God, you believe in me, right? And once a man has removed his knowledge of God in nature, when I say nature, I'm not talking about Mother Nature. No, I already explained. When I say nature, I'm talking about the world that is in control or being controlled by God, right? The world that was created by God, if you believe that, right? Once a man removes his faith in the creator of the nature that he lives in, and he decides to put his faith in the man, then you birth institutions that start supplementing the rules of nature for rules that they think are going to keep you alive. And that is the difference between God and nature. What Jesus was preaching was nature. Jesus was preaching what was at the time, always was before that, and always will be. I think it was like in Matthew. And like I told you, I'm not a preacher. I don't want to make a whole bunch of quotes and things like that. I don't want to sit here and talk and be looking at the Bible the whole time trying to tell you, flip to this page, flip to that. I'm not a pastor. This is not church, right? We talking about the law, and it's up there on the internet, www.thekingslaw.com. And you can scroll through each law. You can look it up by text. It's the last box. You can start typing it. It'll start filtering by text, right? You can look up anything I say. But Jesus said, I think it was in Matthew 25, right? He said not one tittle of this law should change till the end of time, right? And time is something that moves nature, right? That time is what we perceive to be the like the medium that changes our days, right? There's an hour 0 and there's an hour 24 and starts a new day. Time keeps moving. That and we mark time by different motions or different stars that we see, right? When we see the sun, that big star, right? We know it's a new day. When it goes down, we know the day is over, right? And that's our nature around us, which was created by God. If you believe that, right, has time. So if he says not until if he says none of this will change until the end of time, right? It was and always will be. That means that this nature will never exist without this law. Period. It's never going to change. And if you think I'm here to change it, you don't know my father. You don't know you don't know who I am, right? And that's the difference between religion and law, right? I'm preaching to you about you saving your life, you being a husband to your life, right? When we say husband, I'm talking about husband in the farming term, right? Husbandry is you tending to, your I want to say garden, but your crop, right? You making sure you prune your trees so you can have new growth and things like that, right? He's teaching you how to take care of yourself based on nature, right? And none of it has always been the same, and it will never change, right? The people who came after that, and created bodies that we call religions, are not preaching nature. They're giving you rules to be in their group. One thing I do is I challenge anybody who is a Christian, because this show or this podcast is not just for Christians, right? This podcast is for anyone who subscribes to any religion, right? I challenge anyone who has a Bible and who is a Christian, right? To find a place where Jesus, created a religion and wasn't preaching to people about his Father's will, right, and what they were doing to harm their own lives, and telling them to correct it. It's the only thing he did, right? I'm not trying to belittle it by saying that's the only thing he did, but those were his intentions. His intention was not to create a religion. His intention was to fulfill a prophecy, and the prophecy, if anybody, right, the prophecy, it transcends a few religions, right? Like if we talk about Judaism, right? They read the books of prophecy too. If we talk about Islam, they do too. If we talk about Christianity, they do too, right? And the prophecy was that there will be many spotless lambs that will be delivered, and they will preach, for God, right? And warn the people of what they're doing wrong before they are destroyed, right? And they'll be destroyed after they kill this lamb that God delivered to them, right? They didn't say there would just be one, said there would be many of them. So he was there to fulfill a prophecy, like he said, right? I'm going to tell you and show you what you're doing wrong. And by the end of this, it's how he knew he was going to die, right? Because it's in a prophecy. And he knew that would mean the condemnation of Israel, right? And that's it. That's what he intended to do. He did not intend to create a religion. And the religion of Christianity didn't exist when he died. Didn't know anything about it, and I'm sure he would have been against it. And the same goes for many prophets who came, right? But the topic of this show is, what is religion versus God, right? And this topic is important because there are many people who approach me or who I'm talking to, and they say, oh, so you're religious. And I say, no, I'm not religious at all. And their facial expression changes when I say that. They judge me at that point as a bad person, right? They judge me as someone who doesn't believe in God because I tell them I'm not religious. But being religious has nothing to do with God. Being religious it only means that you subscribe to someone's group who claims to follow God, right? And you saying you are religious is you saying that you subscribe to a group and you follow the rules of someone who may or may not follow God, right? To follow God in the Mosaic laws is not to be religious, right? If you actually believe in God, right, and you believe that Moses went up on a mountain, right, while after he led, his people out of Egypt, right, and you believe he went up on a mountain, and you believe God came down to that mountain and delivered him the laws of nature, right? Because God, even if you look at what is written in the book and was said to take place, right? He went up on the mountain and it was covered in a cloud, and it was a storm and things like that. I believe it was a storm with lightning strikes, something like that, right? It's nature. God came to him, gave him the law, came back down with it, right? That's not a religion. And if you believe that didn't come from Moses, if you believe that came from Moses, and Moses was some crackpot who went up on a mountain and just chiseled some stuff and some stone or whatever else, or whatever it may be, then yes, that's a religion. But if you believe that Moses was the only man to see God face to face and get the law in writing so he could deliver it to his people, then that's not a religion. That is the controller and the creator of nature, the planet, right? The planet that's been here for X amount of years, right? Who put life on this planet and is in control of everything about this planet, time, space, what moves, what's created, what's destroyed, right? That's just that creator, that force coming to Moses to give him instruction so he knows how to help himself inside this space we call Earth. That's what that is. That's not a religion. And there is no religion for that. Right? The name for people who follow those rules is Jewish. But there is another religion, which is another conversation, called Judaism, which has the Talmud. But the Talmud was not given to Moses. Only the law. And I think it's important for people to distinguish that so that you know where you stand, right? And you know what comes from God and what came from your neighbor. And you would never know what came. You may know what came from your neighbor, right? You might, your neighbor. When I say your neighbor, I'm talking about anybody who you may meet, right? Your neighbor may tell you, in order to get right with God, you got to meditate 5 times a day, right? And you may say, hey, it's just something he made up. It's based on your intuition or, previous knowledge of, I've never seen that in the Bible, right? But there are certain cases where people don't know nature from what their neighbor told them, right? I mean, your neighbor tells you a lot of things. Your neighbor tells you that the devil was an angel who used to be the angel of music or something like that, and then God sent him down from heaven, something like that. But that's not in the Bible. So where did your neighbor or whatever man who made this up in history get that from? Right? And it all, your neighbor or your brother or sister tells you a lot of things. There's a lot of things in history that get related to God that are not in any book in the Bible. And if you subscribe to, well, the Bible isn't the end all be all, tell me what religious text it came from. Tell me what text that was retrieved from, that was written by a man who, spoke to God. Right? Because if you look at the Bible, a lot of the prophets, and I talked about this in episode 1, right? If you follow the law and you are living righteously, you will become prophetic because you will be one with nature. You will be in harmony with the way the earth moves. So time will become very what do you say? Time will become less linear than it feels when you're not in tune, right? When you're not in tune, you feel like you're trying to catch up, or you feel you might be losing control and you might be trying to slow down. But when you are in tune, everything just is taken care of, right? You're not worried about anything because you're living right and what you need will be provided, right? So all of the prophets, from what I can remember right now, right, they were preaching a message of what was to come based on their people's actions, because they were in tune with nature, the nature that God created. So they could tell the people what was coming, right? And they had this message on the inside because they knew what was going to happen. And God was telling them, hey, you need to say it out loud, right? Because that's going to be their condemnation. If you tell them this message that came straight from God, right? You're in tune from nature. You're in tune with nature. You can see what was and what is going to be. It's your duty to tell your neighbor, which is a law. It's a law. If your neighbor offends you, you have to tell him what he did wrong and rebuke him so he does to stop your suffering, right? So God comes to these people and tells them, hey, you got to say something. It's required that you say something, right? And then they say what is going to happen. And that's what people call a prophet. And if you look at all of the prophets, none of them told anybody to do anything that was out of law. And it is actually a law. It's in the Mosaic law saying that if someone does come to you claiming to be a prophet and they tell you to stop following the law, it tells you don't listen to that person and kill them. That's what it says in there. You don't say I'm an extremist. That's what it says. Because that person, at the end of the day, is trying to convince you to kill yourself. In all actuality, they're attempting mass murder, right? If they tell you to remove yourself from the harmony of nature, and they are telling you convincingly with good lies, that's committing mass murder, because you're going to die, right? If you choose to listen to that and subscribe to that, you're going to die. But to go back, that's what a prophet is, right? A prophet is a man who's in tune with God. It can deliver you a message from the future, because they can see by your actions what's going to happen. They can tell by a group of people's actions what's going to happen, right? You can feel God move and against you or with you. And that has nothing to do with any religion, no matter what religion you are in, right? God may be moving against you or for you based on your actions. Even if you're an atheist, God may be moving against you or with you based on your actions. I'll give you a tidbit from my life, right? There's an example of that. I was in Tokyo not even a month ago, right? A few weeks ago. And I didn't know anything about the culture. I knew about the, the makeup of the city, right? And I knew, about their culture. But I didn't know about their religion. Most people in Japan are atheists, right? They deny the existence of a creator of, nature, right? Or of this universe, right? And a lot of them subscribe to two religions that I'm not sure they include God, that they're actual idol worship. This is not me. Like I told you, I'm not going to tell you anything that I heard from a third party, or it's just my opinion. This is something I seen with my own eyes. They bow and pray to statues, and they create gods, right? Like I heard, and I'm not going to say I heard a story. I was on a tour, right? And the tour guide showed the shrine, right? Walked past the shrine, explained the history behind the shrine. He said, these people made a god out of a successful fisherman who died, I think in the 1800s. And people go pray to the statue of this person. And that is common practice there. And I knew when I was there, I was like, this is not in tune with nature. It doesn't look right and it don't feel right. And I lied to you not. I got on the airplane to leave. There was an earthquake when I was in the airport about an hour before I got on my flight, right? And then right after I took off, maybe like 5 to 8 hours later, there was I think a Coast Guard flight that was going to help the people who were caught in the earthquake. And it crashed into another plane on the tarmac in Japan. And then there are a bunch of mountains there, or not a bunch, but there are still active volcanoes there that could go off at any time, right? And you see there, right? And there's a lot of big cities there, crowded cities that are at the base of these mountains. But if you're not in tune with nature, you can expect things like that to happen, right? Where masses of people are going to be killed by nature because you're not in tune with it, right? And that's all. So anyone who, is a Muslim, Christian, a Jewish person, a Catholic person, make sure you take account of what you're doing and where you're getting your instructions from. Are my instructions coming from God, my creator, or is this man-made? And take a real look at that, and take take that into consideration. Is my religion my God, or is God my God? Right? Because if there's only one God, there are a lot of religions. I think all the religions I named claim that they believe in the God that I'm talking about, the God that delivered the law to Moses on Mount Sinai in Egypt, right? Or Mount Sinai in Egypt. All these religions, I believe, claim to follow and believe in that same God. So if you claim to follow and believe in that same God, it would benefit you to take a second look at where the rules in your life come from. And another thing is, make sure when you're joining these groups, if you do join, I'm not telling anybody to join any of these groups, right? I'm not talking about Jew. We'll talk about, Jewish and Judaism later on, right? But make sure when you join, if you do choose to join any of these groups, make sure you go into these people's houses before you decide to listen to what they say from afar from America, right? Because anybody can tell you anything so that you join their group if you've never been to their house. And I'll talk about that in later episodes, about me going. And when I say house, when I say home, I mean their homeland, right? Where these people come from, their country, a country where their religion is predominant, right? Like I would talk about Japan, right? There are a lot of people who are in America who are Japanese who go to church, right? They have traditional, churches and things like that. And I'm not saying that the church is a great place. We'll talk about that later, right? But they seem to follow the traditional American way of life, right? But when you go to their home country, and a lot of people say, oh, Buddhism is great. It's a religion of peace. They believe in God too. Yeah, someone can tell you that when you're in America and they know your traditions and they've read your religious text, right? They can tell you that they believe in God because they know what to tell. They know what is tradition in your country, and they'll just appeal to the traditions of your country, and they'll say, hey, I got this thing called Buddhism. I got this thing called Mormonism, right? But I would urge you to go to the homeland of those people and see what they are really about. And in a lot of these cases, because I've done a lot of traveling over the past, 5 years. In a lot of these cases, when you go to these people's countries, they do not believe in God. And a lot of them have different gods. Not even like covertly. They're outright about it. Like I told you, in Japan, they have shrines. I took a couple of tours. They said, hey man, you go in there, you clap 3 times and you bow to the whatever that statue is. I said, yeah, I'm good on that. Right? Because they're comfortable. They're in their country. They're not going to tell you that in America because they know in America that would be shocking, right? You don't hear about things like that in America. You don't see people bowing to statues in America. As secular as America is, that's still kind of socially unacceptable, right? But when you go to these people's homes who are selling you on their religions, you'll see who they truly are because they'll be comfortable. And I've been in a lot of these people's homes, and it will be discussed in future episodes. I've been to a lot of these people's homes, and they have different gods openly that they talk about, that they pray to, that they have shrines to. And a lot of people in America who come from God-fearing homes, right? Whether it be Christian or, Catholic or Judaism, right? A lot of people say, hey, man, this is a more peaceful religion. It's still God. It's all the same thing, but it's not. I promise you. Make sure you go to that person's homeland and see what they're signing you up for. A lot of them straight up praying to statues in 2024. That's not something that just, the Bible has that in plenty of places, right? It has it in Israel, where it says they turn to idols, or it has it in, places that surround Israel, and you think that, hey, this is only a Semitic land. And when I say Semitic land, I'm talking about the Middle East, right? This happened back in the day in those times. No, it's still going on today. I've seen it with my own eyes. I just gave you a case. The story I'm telling you is what I've seen with my own eyes. That was 2023. That was literally this is right now. It's January 2024. It's January 9th. That was, the week of Christmas. It's happening today openly. I think like I told you, I don't subscribe to statistics because, I've never been interviewed for anything that ended up in the data set for some statistic in a Time magazine in my life. But they say they interviewed all of America. So, but one thing that I did, hear during these tours twice was, hey, 64% of people in Japan are atheists. And then, they broke down the percentages that were, the other two religions that they have. You can look up the major religions that they have in their country if you want to. I don't want to talk about them. And those two religions are all based in worshiping man-made gods that are statues and going to bow and throw coins for luck at these shrines to these statues and worshiping them. So be careful what you subscribe to, because I know a bunch of people in America, some of them that I'm related to, and they say Buddhism's the same thing as Christianity. He said they believe in God too. Like, have you ever been out there? These people are praying to statues, man. So be careful, because people will tell you anything when you're in America, so you can support their cause. If you haven't been to that person's homeland, or if you haven't been to that the reason I'm saying homeland, because their house doesn't mean anything. If you come to America and he knows what American traditions are and he's an atheist, he's going to follow American traditions and then get you to sign up what he wants you to do. He can read about you and see what you like and don't like, right? Just like, he can read about you and say, these people don't entertain other gods. They only have one God. Right. And they aren't bowing any statues. That is very bad. That is very taboo in this country. Right. So they appeal to the social norms of your country to get you to sign up with their group. So don't pay attention to what they do in your lane. Make sure you go to that person's homeland and verify what they're talking about. And you will find in many cases that person has multiple gods, or may just be worshiping a statue. So be careful. And that's it for this topic. Thank you for joining me. I'll take time to talk about the websites, www.thekingslaw.com. Right, that's the free list of laws. And make sure you look and study, thoroughly, and don't just look at the list, right? Because at this point in time, all the laws are there, but they're still being edited to make sure they're in order and things like that. I'm actually doing that right now. But make sure you look at the laws and verify what's in the Bible, right? Not that they all are in the Bible, but just verify, right? It's there, and make sure you read and get familiar and things like that. And maybe read the whole chapter or just read the whole thing. And another thing, there is donations up there. This isn't a church, right? But there is, an intention to do more than what is available right now. And that website that's up there, I am a software developer by trade, right? I graduated with a degree in computer science, and I have been a software developer for a long time, right? For companies and contracted for myself. And that website was created by myself. So there is an intention to make sure there's a team there to expand and start translating into all languages and things like that, and a lot of other things to come. So if you feel, if you have the ability to, please help out, right? Because this is something that we all need to push for, to make sure that this understanding is out there. Because like I said, this has become lost and very taboo to talk about, right? When I tell people I'm not religious, you can tell, you can look in their eyes and see them sending me straight to hell, right? If I go to these other places around the world and I tell them, well, I fear God, this, and the third, such and such, I follow the law, right? They look at you like you're a fool, But if you believe in God, right? If you claim to believe in the same God that delivered the law to Moses, this is nature. This is life. So we need to, make a safe space where people are able to, push that forward, right? And not live amongst and clear out some of the things that are going on. One of them I just pointed out to you, right? Talking about idol worship and things like that, and kind of call those things out, right? So if you can help out, to help move these things along more quickly, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a shop up there, but like I told you in the first episode, that's all. The base, right, is not what it's intended to be at yet, right? There's a lot more to do, and that is it. Hope you enjoyed this and this was helpful information, and have a good one. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.